Welcome to Hey Chaplain. My name is Jared Altick, and I'm a chaplain with the police department. This is a special quarterly update episode where we're going to look into the mailbag and also talk about some of the behind-the-scenes processes that go into making the Hey Chaplain podcast. Our guest co-host today is Kaleb Sackett. You've heard him on multiple episodes already, but let me remind you, Kaleb is our friend from St. Louis, now in Kansas City, and my coworker in ministry. Here's our quarterly update and mailbag episode with Kaleb Sackett. Hello, Kaleb. How are you today?
I'm great, Jared. How are you?
I'm doing well.
You recently put out an interesting mini-series on your podcast, didn't you?
I'd never done that before. Yeah, that was a new thing. Do a mini-series or a limited series.
Tell me about it. Did it go well?
Oh, I think it went very well. It seemed to be well received. The miniseries covered the ICPC convention, which is the International Conference of Police Chaplains. It was called the Daily ICPC, and I was at the convention and doing a daily episode of about 10 to 15 minutes each. And so I had people at the convention who were like, I listened to yesterday's episode and you know, coming up and talking about it and that kind of thing. And after the first day, I actually recorded people saying hello or say, hey, thanks for listening to Hey Chaplain. And I was able to put a couple little cameos at the beginning of the episode. And that went over really well too.
That's pretty cool. Now, you're probably not going to do a mini series like this all the time, but in the future, if you were ever to do one again, what'd you learn from doing this one?
Well, you know, a few things. First of all, the scheduling of it. So I just put this on top of my normal schedule. I still released a Monday episode that Monday. It was a first, third, or fifth Monday. So I kept that schedule the same and just added this on top of it. And what it did is it cannibalized part of the listenership of that regular episode. So episode 118, it lost a huge chunk of its normal, of what, like the previous episodes and the episodes since then. You know, what the normal curve I see in the statistics, hundreds and hundreds of listens didn't happen because within so many hours, an episode came out that night. And then the next day, and then the next day, and then the next day. So that whole week where that episode, the normal episode, would have been getting stats, kind of got cannibalized by the mini-series popping up every day.
So something about your listenership or the way that people tune into podcasts maybe has them just going to whatever the most recent episode happens to be.
That's what I think happened. I think there's just a percentage of listeners. Let's say there's just 10 or 20% of listeners. They just listen to whatever the most recent thing is, regardless of whether it's connected to what they've heard before. So there are surely people out there who they heard episode 117 and then they went to the Daily ICPC episode 3. And I'm like, why would you do that? Why wouldn't you go back and catch the things you missed? And but I don't think they caught them all, because after, in the miniseries itself, the first intro episode was really well received, and day 5 was really well received. But days 1 through 4, I think, were being cannibalized by the following episodes. And so they had lower numbers also. And so lots of my regular listeners listen to everything. They're completionists like me. They want to hear the entire thing. But a percentage of the casual listeners just caught whatever episode they happened to see at the top of the list that day and then didn't see anything after that or before that. So to each their own, I guess. The customer's always right in matters of taste and preference.
Well, hopefully in the future, if you ever do a mini series again, you'll be able to take some lessons from that and your scheduling.
Well, and to record stuff away from my studio, I was worried about my equipment. I have some very nice little lavalier mics. They're a little box that clips to your tie or to your collar. And they have a little dead cat on them. It's a little fuzzy microphone cover. And I was like, how good will that sound? in regard to that, I was super pleased. So I was coming back and plugging those little microphones into my laptop at the end of the day and building the episode. And the audio I got from those were fantastic. I was very, very, very pleased. The difficult thing recording on site was finding a place quiet enough to record. I didn't mind that there was some crowd noise or some background noise occasionally, but it was difficult to find a place that wasn't just noisy. And I didn't want to hear other people's conversations, and have to try to adjust the settings to try to take that conversation down to where it wasn't really audible. Trying to get good, clean recordings, which is really hard to do in the wild. And then the other issue is one recording specifically, I was doing one of those cameos and popular music was being played in the ballroom. And I actually had to walk somebody out the back of the ballroom, down a hallway into like a kitchen and record there, which it wasn't great acoustics, but it was away from that popular music.
And you can't do that because you get a copyright strike.
Exactly. It would immediately get struck on YouTube, and even some of the other podcast players, I would potentially have trouble because I don't have rights to that music. And so I had to get away from that popular music being played in the background. All right, Caleb, let's look at the mailbag. I've printed off several for you. What do you have?
This first one comes from Zach in New Mexico. He writes, "Thank you so much for everything you do in this podcast. It has been a service to me as a police officer since I first started listening. Just listen to the mailbag with Kaleb Sackett."
Hey.
Oh my goodness.
You got to mention.
I'm famous. He says, "I've been looking into becoming a law enforcement chaplain while continuing to work as a full-time police officer for the last 2 years now. My current department/city has agreed to pay for me to receive chaplain training. I appreciate the example you have given to me since I started listening and hope to be a great chaplain to my city and department." Wow. That's incredible.
I am nearly certain that Zach is the same Zach who every time I post something on Instagram, he immediately likes it and reposts it and that kind of thing, which I really appreciate. But I've noticed a Zach pop up about the same time that I got this message. And so I very much appreciate that. Good luck, Zach. Can't wait for you to get into that training and to expand what you do for your department. I think it's fantastic.
And it's awesome that they're on board with it too, and they're actually investing in that.
That not everybody gets a warm reception from their agency. That sometimes can, your mileage may vary about whether or not they want to support that. So good for him.
Awesome. All right, this next one comes from Lead Patrol Chaplain Randy Tucker with the Ventura County Sheriff's Office in California. He says, "I just listened to Does a Chaplain Need a Degree? The mailbag with Kaleb Sackett." That was a previous mailbag we did.
2 in a row. Hey.
He says, "I'd be interested to know what questions you would ask chaplain candidates that meet all of the licensing and education basic requirements to qualify for consideration as a chaplain. In the episode, you spoke of calling, purpose, and aptitude. What questions would you ask to gain insight into these issues, given that candidates might know the right answer to the most common questions? Thanks."
I thought about this for a long time, Randy, and I don't know that there is a good set of questions, because really any questions you can come up with, they could research and prepare for and tell you what you want to hear. So I think the better thing is to gauge their reactions, not just while you're interviewing them, but taking them on things like ride-alongs and station visits. Now, that new experience may be really, that may throw them for a curve. You may not be getting their normal behavior the first time they're on a ride-along, but you are looking for red flags. You're looking for things like ulterior motives and selfish behavior, being unteachable, having, the inability to just exercise basic good judgment, because some people really, really can't. You want to, like I said, you want to take into account that they may be kind of wowed or kind of fish out of water when they're in the police department for the first time. But you're looking for basically indications of what their character may be like. And because you're looking for that, and it's not as simple as, well, here's 3 interview questions that'll reveal it, I think that you really should consider a probationary period where you've accepted somebody into the program, but they're not official yet for some length of time. And I don't know how long that should be. And I'm sure lots of chaplains have different opinions if that needs to be a year or if it can be 3 months or something else. That might depend on how busy you are, how many call outs that chaplain might get. But I think the probationary period might be the best solution.
Sure, because it's possible it just might not be a good fit.
Oh, yeah.
It might not even be that person is a, quote, bad chaplain, but they might not be the right chaplain for that agency.
Oh, that's an excellent. Yeah. I don't mean to imply that a bad chaplain is like a morally bad person, but some people who are great in other ministry fields are just not a good fit for law enforcement chaplaincy. And they would be better off working in hospice or a hospital or in a church or any number of other places and do great, and they would excel, but just not in law enforcement chaplaincy.
Sure.
Yeah.
This next question comes from a Massachusetts listener who writes, Episode 116 had some of the most brilliant and practical articulations of both Christian apologetics and the role and motivation of the police within the context of American civics. Definitely going to share this episode with my coworkers as a motivational encouragement, but also as a clear example of how to faithfully embark in conversation with someone who is wrestling with the problem of evil in their law enforcement job, but who is not yet accustomed to the lens of biblical faith and worldview. Thank you. Well, thank you. We appreciate you sharing the episode.
Yeah. Episode 116 was Jim Bontrager, the current past president of ICPC. And he did a really interesting job of balancing like theological questions with some great like kind of American patriotism and you know what makes this country great and that kind of thing. Lots of quotes, lots of philosophy, lots of good theology. It was kind of hitting you from every direction. And it's interesting. I put that out there thinking, boy, I wonder if people are going to want something like this. And I had a tremendously positive response to that episode. I had people coming up to me at the convention saying like, that's the best episode I've ever heard. I mean, it's like, there's certainly a personality type, maybe particularly some chaplains who that just resonated with them. And I'm really happy for that. I'm glad Jim did a tremendous job. And I was watching him. We were doing it over a video conference and he had some notes, but it was amazing how many of those quotes and Bible verses and portions of the U.S. Constitution he just knew off the top of his head. It was super impressive watching him talk.
That's awesome. Fantastic. Here's another one from an ICPC member from York, Pennsylvania. I appreciate the daily annual training seminar podcasts because I was part of the host team and a presenter at last year's annual training seminar in Pittsburgh. Too many schedule conflicts to do this year's, so thanks for being my eyes and ears.
Yeah, I actually received this fan mail. So the fan mail doesn't go to me directly. It goes to my web host, and I can't see who sent it. It just gives me a phone number, like an area code. And so this person was, somewhere in Pennsylvania, I presume, near Pittsburgh. And they wrote this during the week of the conference. They wrote and said, "Oh, thank goodness someone's covering this. It's as if I'm there." And I thought, well, that's great. I'm providing a service to those who couldn't make it this year and you had a scheduling conflict or whatever. I thought that was great.
Sure, you were like the on the ground, beat reporter for the week.
Yeah, that was kind of fun.
We've got one more here from Eben Fowler of Bot Radio fame.
Oh, yeah. He was on the air for years.
He says to Jared and Ward, your co-host, I had an opportunity to listen to all of the ICPC update episodes yesterday and wanted to let you guys know what a great job you did. Very interesting and informative. And Jared, I hope your return flight was better than your flight down to Little Rock. And as we know from the ICPC wrap-up, It was not.
No, it was not. Yeah, even he emailed me just before that episode went out. And so he was not able to hear the answer to his question, but I'll answer it now. No. Yeah, I got stuck in another airport for hours and hours and hours and didn't get home.
Wonderful city.
Yeah, I know you're a little biased towards St. Louis, but yes, it's a nice airport. That's nicer if you don't spend umpteen hours, drumming your fingers, waiting for a flight to arrive.
I can testify.
Absolutely. Yeah. And it's wonderful too to hear from somebody. Bot Radio is a large Christian radio network, and it's something I listened to for years and years. And I've just met Eben here in recent years, but it's very flattering to have a professional radio guy for him to say, hey, nice job. Actually, high praise. I appreciate that.
Yeah. Fantastic. These quarterly updates are a regular feature of the show. We often read fan mail and questions people have, but in the future, if other people would like for their mail to be read, how do they get in contact with you?
So in the show notes or the episode description of every episode, you have a couple different ways to contact me. The email for the podcast is in those show notes, and you can just send me an email. And I get those. I read those regularly. I'll try to respond if I can in a timely fashion. That's a great way, especially if you just have a question. The email is a great mechanism to do that. But if you want just to send an attaboy, hey, I've got a comment that I might want read on an episode like this, there's also a feature in there that should be the very first line that you see in the episode description. And it says text a message to the show. That sends a text message to my web host. And then I get that. It pops up as an alert on my phone, but I can't respond to it. And so this is semi-anonymous. It'll just basically give me your area code so I know what part of the country the message came from. If you want to indicate who you are, you need to include that in the text message. You need to say, I am this person from this place, or here's how to contact me, because I can't text you back.
Right. Otherwise, it's just anonymous and you kind of know sort of where they're from.
Right. Assuming that your phone is where you're from.
That's true.
But please write in. I love hearing from people, and especially if you use the email address, I'll try to write you back.
Sounds like a plan. Well, that's the mailbag for this time.
Kaleb, can't wait to see you back next time.
Awesome. Appreciate it, Jared.
I want to thank Kaleb for coming in and co-hosting the show again. And I especially want to thank those who've been supporting this show on buymeacoffee.com. That has been the primary way for people to support this show and to help contribute to what I'm doing here. It defrays the costs that I have associated with running and managing a podcast. I am so impressed with how generous people have been. Thank you, thank you, thank you. You may not think that $5 or $10 representing a virtual coffee would mean very much, but it makes all the difference. You literally pay the bills for this podcast, and your generosity means the world to me. The views expressed here are the personal views of the host and our guest and do not necessarily represent the views of any law enforcement agency or its components. If you like this episode, please share it with a cop or someone who loves a cop. Thank you for listening to Hey Chaplain, and as always, pray for peace in our city.